So, I've been flying my Corsair S now that I got the speed controller fixed. And unfortunately, the way the weather is right now, I've really done most of my flying kind of later in the day, early evening, or just before sunset. And unfortunately, that tends to be on kind of dark and cloudy conditions. And even though the aircraft has these bright white arrows, and this yellow cowl, and an arrow on the tail, it can be a little difficult to see at distance. And so losing orientation of this aircraft is somewhat of a problem for me right now. It gets backlit very easily and just becomes a black shape in the sky. So, trying to figure out what I can do, and I wanted to maintain a very scale appearance. I didn't want to repaint the aircraft or add anything that would look unnatural to the aircraft. I wanted to keep it scale. So that kind of led me down a path of saying, well, what am I going to do about this? Well, what do real airplanes do with trying to be able to see them in the sky? Well, they put lights on them. So what I ended up doing is I had ordered this Turnigy Navigation LED kit, and I actually ordered it for my PBY Catalina to replace the landing lights and put on lights on that thing. But since this seems to be getting a lot more flying time right now, and it's a little bit more difficult to see being backlit in the evening, I decided to go ahead and install this on the Corsair. Now, when you first get this thing, it's a mass of wires, obviously way more than this. It's got a little control box. It's got all sorts of stuff. It's a very intimidating looking kit when you first get it out of the box. So, but have no fear. It's actually easier than you would expect to install. So, let's take a look and see how I did it. Pop the canopy off here. And as you can see inside here, there is a yellow control module, and that is simply just taped to the inside of the fuselage. It has a number of wires that run back to the different lights. So I took the wings off, and I run the wires right through the center hole here where the aileron servos come through. And from there, I simply took off, well, of course I had to take the landing skids off. If you have the gear on, you don't have to worry about this. But there is some tape that the factory has applied over the aileron servo wires. So I peeled that back and I ran the wires underneath the tape until they exited out in front of the servo. And then from here I cut a slit using a X-Acto knife. And then for right now they're just taped in. I will eventually go through and paint over this. And then to hold the LEDs onto the wing, I use a little bit of hot glue. That way they can come loose or they can break away in case of impact. So I think that's a little extra protection there. So I got both sides done. They're fairly equal in size. Of course, being hot glue, you get the little stringy things everywhere. You'll have to go back through and clean it up. And the Turnigy kit actually includes a number of options. You have the red and green navigation lights. You get 2 white landing lights, 2 white strobe lights, and 2 red strobe lights. So what I ended up doing is adding the strobe lights. I added one here and then one directly on the bottom to help a little bit with orientation. I tried to offset them a little bit so that they wouldn't be directly over each other, but that didn't really work as well. Now the Turnigy lights aren't quite long enough to reach where I put the control unit to reach the tail, so I may end up having to move this because the actual Corsair had a light on the back here, and I'd like to try to add that to mine too, but I may have to move my control module in order to do that. The installation is really easy. It took about an hour or so, and most of that time was actually spent just trying to figure out what lights I wanted to use. So I kept it simple about the navigation lights and 2 strobes. So let's take a look at how this looks lit up. There's the ESC lighting up. I'm going to hit the lights to see if it changes at all. It might be too light. But let's take a look. Here we go. So we have our green navigation light, and we have our red navigation light. We also have the 2 strobe lights that are flashing, one on top, one on bottom. So hopefully by doing this, we're going to have a little bit better visibility, a little bit better orientation on the aircraft in low light flying conditions, which unfortunately is where I've been spending a lot of my time. So if you think that the arrows in the yellow are going to be enough, it probably won't be when you actually find out you get it in the air and you get it far enough away from you that they're not quite enough. So we're going to try the lights. So hopefully later this week we're going to give it out and give it a try and see how well they do. But yeah, the installation pretty easy, and I think it's a very scale solution to a visibility problem. And while the kit looks intimidating, you shouldn't have any fear about installing it. It actually goes much easier than I would have expected. And I'm probably going to order even more of these kits for my other aircraft. I was really happy with the price, really happy with the quality. So if you're in the mood for some lights, check out the Turnigy LED navigation lights.